You're listening to the Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast, where when you can't be in the outdoors, we bring it to you. Welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Tails Outdoor Podcast. My name is Walt, his name is Chase, and our job, our singular mission, is to bring the outdoors to you when you can't be in the outdoors yourself. Today, we are bringing you a guest that hails from a state that we have discussed very little, the fine state of Oklahoma. And as I say that, I realize I didn't ask him my one opener question that I thought would be funny. I've been holding on to it all day, Chase, and that was, is Oklahoma the Midwest or the West?
Right. Yeah.
I didn't ask that question.
Yeah. I don't know.
What a knucklehead.
Yeah, that would have been I'm not really sure. So
Yeah. Well, dadgummit, we're going to have him back on, I guess. Darn.
Oh, yeah.
I say that with joking intent here, guys, because in all reality, tonight's guest is, or today when you're listening, is phenomenal. We had Rick Ellet on, and the dude is just a national treasure. He is so down to earth and has such a good time going after whitetails and some of the neatest terrain out there. He's just got this overwhelmingly positive attitude that I think could be much needed in the hunting community. He likes it in any way that anybody wants to get out there, so long as they're enjoying themselves. And it's always good to share as many stories as we got to with Ricky.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy. He's got a great passion for whitetails in his state of Oklahoma. And like you mentioned, he mixed it up. I mean, he would give us some tactics, and then we'd have a story in there, and then some more tactics and strategy and things. So I think the listeners will definitely enjoy this podcast, and they'll take quite a few things away from it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, this is a good one, and I can already tell you right now, Ricky is going to be back on the podcast at some point in time. He's too good a guy not to.
Yeah, we're trying to line up a Woodsmanship series for the podcast, and I think we got him and hopefully Mr. Warren Womack. So I think we've got two right there. So
yeah, that's right.
Maybe get one or two more, and I think we'll have a good series on Woodsmanship for everybody. And maybe hit on that. Probably the summer or late spring, early summer. Get everybody thinking about whitetails and some of the stuff that they should focus on prior to the season and during the season.
For sure. Yeah, I'm really happy with this one. This is one of those good campfire. It's not really, I wouldn't consider it a BS session. You're learning and hearing things as you go, and you're enjoying it at the whole time. So, huge thanks for Ricky for coming on. And this one does run about an hour and a half, so we are going to do our best to keep these intros short. And in part, we're going to thank the people who make this episode possible. First and foremost, that is our Patreon subscribers. If you don't know what Patreon is, it is a crowdfunding source that allows us to offset the operating costs of the show. New camera gear, sensitive topic, new camera gear, hosting fees, the money that we raise there goes right into giveaways that we do 4 times a year and the operating cost of the show. And if you like this show, you like the YouTube content and the podcast content, and you want to see it go on and advance and grow in its scope, consider joining Patreon. We'll send you some stickers. If you pick the right tier, you can get a free hat, and we're just thankful, overwhelmingly grateful for all the people who joined up and are part of Patreon.
Partnered up with Scree Gear. I know the other day when I was out hunting and it was 27 degrees, I was definitely happy to have all of my layers of Scree Gear on. As most of you know, I'm not like a super fan of the cold weather, but it definitely kept me warm, kept me in the stand long, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about the hunt itself on a future podcast, because I was able to take a deer that day. But if you guys would like to support us some and would like to get some great gear, you can go to screegear.com, and if you enter in the code Chasing Tails, all caps, you can save 15% off your purchase.
And last but not least, my favorite piece of gear to use is from Tethered. This past weekend, I spent an exorbitant amount of time in the saddle to the point where I was almost daydreaming at point, literally falling asleep standing up. But that's a testament to the comfort of the Phantom. I did all-day sits in the Phantom down in South Georgia on a quota hunt, had an absolute blast doing so, and that kit has kept me mobile. Its profile is small, it's easy to set up, it's comfortable, all day use. The Predator platform is amazing. It is just what they offer as a complete package, I think, could change the way that you pursue whitetails, bear, hog, or any of it. If you can hunt from a tree, I think this is going to be an awesome tool for you. So check them out, tetherednation.com. Let them know that we sent you over there. And if you got any questions about saddle hunting, shoot us a DM. We'd love to talk about it with you. It's a big passion of ours, and we use ours religiously. But Chase, I think that's about all the business we've got. What do you say we get them onto the show?
Let's do it.
All right, on the line, we have got a guest that I am excited to bring to you guys tonight, Ricky Ellet. Dude, thank you for tuning in all the way from the backcountry of Oklahoma.
You're welcome.
We were talking offline, and it sounded like you were. Did you say you were on the river to get service?
Yeah, I'm on the river right now. I'm actually at a little base camp down here that we hunt out of. Off the river is about the best spot I could come to get service. So.
Well, it's mighty fine service.
I'm glad. I keep looking at the bars on my phone, and I keep having 3. So I'm like, as long as I got 3, I'm all right.
There you go. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is what I need when we have a podcast, Chase, is a dude to tune in from camp and talk hunting. That just feels like the most authentic campfire discussion possible.
Oh yeah, it does.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, man, dude. So why don't we introduce you to the guests? Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from? Obviously, tonight we're going to be talking about whitetails predominantly, but tell everybody kind of a little bit about yourself and what's your favorite way to pursue whitetails.
Well, I'm from Davis, Oklahoma. That's at the foot of the Arbuckle Mountains and down on the Ouachita River. And I kind of hunt both. I'll hunt the mountains and I hunt the river a lot. And I'm kind of a mobile hunter, you would call it. I like to go in and scout and get way back where there's no pressure. And I like to find the deer and just go back in there and set up and get on a trail that he's using and try to hang with him until I get him killed. Or somebody else gets him killed, he's not coming around no more, then I move on to the next spot I find. That's basically how I hunt. I don't really, it's legal to bait here in Oklahoma, but I don't do much baiting or nothing like that. And if we have a pretty rough winter, I'll feed out, the does. I'll try to keep them a little bit of feed out up and down the river. But I hardly ever hunt over bait or anything like that. I like to go in and find a trail and find a bunch of buck rubs or scrape lines or whatever it may be, and I like to set up like that. I keep everything with me, and I'll go in with climbing sticks and put up a stand, or I hunt that way, but I hunt off the ground a lot too. I like to spot and stalk the most I can, but sometimes way down here in this thick country on the river, it's hard to do it. It's hard to do it like that. So I'll set up a stand and try to hang with him for 2 or 3 days, and I try to do all day sets, because down here everybody says how the bucks, they turn nocturnal. Well, they do. They don't show themselves in the open fields and the crop fields and stuff like that in the daylight, but they'll show them moving this thick timber along the river during the daytime, and so that's kind of been my bread and butter is the thick stuff.
Right on.
I can catch them on their feet, moving around in the thicker stuff. They'll get up and move all day, pretty much around the bedding areas. That's kind of the way I hunt. Comes to the mountains, I'll go up in the mountains. I'll try to spend the way I do it. I try to spend about a week in the river bottoms, and then I'll move maybe a week in the mountains. That way I can kind of see, especially when it starts getting in the middle of October, toward the end of October. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to see, because, the bucks are starting to get on their feet. They're starting to go around scent checking. And so I'll kind of shift directions every other week, and I'll try to get up in the mountains, and I'll sit all day in glass. And I'll see what I got. And if I got something I really want to pursue, then I'll, have it I'll have it. And then down here I can kind of check, and I'll just kind of switch back and forth. I like to kill one in the mountains and one on the river bottoms. That's what I try to do, because we're allowed a 2 buck limit down here. So that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Right on, man. I know you mentioned you're a member of that trad life.
Yeah. I'm a member of I'm a member of a trad club. Yeah, I'm a dude. I love the trad. I love to shoot trad. It's it's just a passion, man. Ever since I shot my first deer, I shot a big deer. And it was a fluke. And I'm going to tell you all the story because everybody said, "Well, man, that's the best accident ever."
Okay.
But I ended up buying a $5 longbow. We have what they call a dog trade. It used to be where everybody traded hunting dogs on Sunday over here. When I was younger, I went over there and they sell all kinds of hunting stuff and this used stuff. And I bought an old Fred Bear Bearcat longbow for $5. And my buddy, he builds traditional strings, and I took it out there to him, and he built me a string. And first time I took it out, I doubted myself, and I thought, what am I going to do if a big deer comes by? I said, I've shot this thing a handful of times, and I'm still not really good at it. And I was like, if he's 10 yards or in, I'll shoot at him. I said, but let me get a doe down first. So I go 3 or 4 days there, and I'm sitting in the stand, and I see a doe coming. Well, I think it's a doe. It's so thick down in here. And I'm like, it's a doe. It's going to work out. So here comes this doe that I'm thinking is a doe. When it gets closer, I'm like, well, that might be a buck. And I'm looking at it, and here he comes. And when he clears, I see his horns, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've messed up. I didn't bring a compound. I'm sitting here with this $5 dog trade bow, and I'm like, this in my stomach. I'm just sunk down. I'm like, this is one of the biggest deer that I've ever seen down in here on the river bottoms. And I'm like, and I got a $5 dog trade bow. And I'm like, don't even shoot at him. Let him pass. Come back tomorrow and bring a compound. And he comes up and he comes to about 15 yards. And I'm like, that's 15 yards. I've been shooting my tail end off, shooting this bow. I'm like, I can make it. So anyway, I go to pull the bow back, and I'm so nervous that I'm holding my finger. Before I knew what I was doing, and I shot very much trad, I got my finger over the shelf, holding the arrow on the shelf of the bow. I go to pull it back, and I'm so nervous that I pull the arrow off the string, and the arrow falls down and hits the stand. And he jumps and he looks back behind him, and he runs right under my stand to about 8 yards and stops. And he's looking the other way. He don't know what's going on. And I'm sitting there shaking, and I'm trying to get another arrow out of the quiver. And I finally get another arrow, and I stick it on there. And he's looking behind him, and I'm like, it's 8 yards. You can make this. You know, at that time, I didn't know it was 8 yards. When I got down at the tree, I stepped it off. But anyway, I'm like, he's so close, you can make this shot. And I pulled back, and I was like, and I'm breathing hard. And I know this deer, he's thinking something's up. And I got the whole tree shaking, I'm sure. And I let it go, and it just smokes. And so I call Buddy when I get service. I get down and I go the opposite way, and I get out there where I get service, and I call Buddy. I'm like, I just shot a deer with that bow. He's like, how good of a shot was it? And I said, oh, it looked like it smoked him. And he says, you going to go look for him? I said, no. I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm going to give him about 5 hours, and I'm going to go look for him. I said, because I said, I'm nervous. I said, I don't know what. It was a 45-pound longbow, and I was like, he said, man, let me tell you something. He said, a 45-pound longbow, he said, will smoke plumb through a deer. He said, you got sharp broadheads? I said, yeah, I got sharp broadheads. And he said, just calm down. He said, you'll find him. So I gave him about an hour. I went and looked, and he was about 30 yards from the stand, deader in the doorknob. And then after that, man, it was hard for me to pick up a compound again. That'll kind of ruin you right there. And I've never killed another deer that big with a trad bow, but I've killed a lot of deer with a trad bow since then. And man, I love it. It's a rush.
So do you think you were born with that lucky horseshoe, or did you acquire it with the $5 bow?
It had to have I guess that was $5 worth of luck that come with that bow.
Good Lord.
I don't know. Something was looking out for me, man. There's a guy that's won. He's won like the world like 3 times. He lives over here beside me, the world longbow shoot, and he's been over the country shooting, man. He's a crazy awesome shot, and we went to some tournaments, and I don't shoot a whole lot of tournaments, but I went one day, and me and him shot in a group. I had to shoot with him, not really against him, but he was part of the competition. And he told me, he said, hey, he said, I seen that deer. I had to take that deer here not too long ago and have him have his nose redid. And they repainted it, and he went over to a guy's house. He's friends with him, and he said, I seen that deer you killed. And he said, that's a giant with a longbow. And I said, yeah. I said, that's crazy. And I told him the story, and he said, there's no way. And I said, yeah, man, that was my first deer. And I thought it was a doe coming down the trail. I told him about the arrow dropping, and he's killed giants with his longbow. And he said, that is crazy. He said, man, the first deer I ever shot with my longbow was a little bitty spike. And I said, man, that was just straight luck. I said, I'm not even going to try to lie and say it was skill or nothing else. I said, that was luck. He said, man, I wish I could have got that lucky. And I said, yeah. I said, I can't believe it. We still got the bow too. My son shoots that bow, and he's won 2 competitions with that bow. So it was pretty cool.
Dadgum.
Yeah. Yeah. In the 17 and under, he took it out 2 times and won both competition shoots that he shot with it. So, and he likes it. He loves it. And I'm like, man, don't ever lose that bow. Don't ever leave it nowhere. You know how teenagers are.
Yeah.
They think they're hunting stuff to their buddy's house stuff. I said, don't ever leave that bow. I said, that bow is lucky. Yeah. Anyways, that was a little story. Kind of got off topic.
No, man, that's perfectly on topic. So, do you carry the compound anymore at all, or are you just completely done with
man. I'm gonna go into another story with y'all real quick.
Go for it.
This year we were up in Ada, Oklahoma, about 30 miles from. I live in Davis, right here. I know I told you I lived in Davis, I think, to begin with, but I wasn't sure. But so Ada's about 30 miles from us. My son said, let's go up to the archery and the gun shop up there. And I said, okay, let's go. And so we went up there, and we're looking around, and they got a new Matthews. It was the VXR, I think, this year. And it was in the OD green and everything, 31 and a half. And he said, Dad, this bow is sweet and all this. And I said, you think we ought to buy it? And he was like, yeah, we ought to buy it. We ought to buy it. So before it was all over, the salesman up there, he put some voodoo on me, and I had this bow all rigged out, and I left with it, and I brought it back home, and I started shooting this bow, and then I'd go get my recurve and shoot it. Then I'd shoot this bow, and then I'd go get my recurve and shoot it. And I took it out one day, and I shot 2 pigs with it, and I videoed it. I put it on the Facebook. I made 2 shots, and I shot 1 pig like at 60 yards with it, and just smoked it. And another pig was pretty close. I smoked it, and I was like, you know what? It ain't nothing like shooting a trad bow. I didn't even feel the accomplishment. You know, it's kind of hard to say, but it wasn't rewarding. You know what I mean? Like it would have been with a trad bow. So
Sure.
But the deal with the trad bow that I like so much is you have to be so close on them, man. It don't come to really as much as the equipment as it does the kind of your woodsmanship. And man, I'm big on like woodsmanship.
Sure.
And yeah, I actually own a tree company. I run a little old tree company here in Davis, when it ain't hunting season, and it's called Woodsman's Tree Service. Because man, I've always said the first step to killing big deer is you got to be a woodsman, or you got to be real lucky. But you're not going to be lucky consistently every year. You know, if you're going to kill nice deer, you got to have some woodsmanship. And I've always taught my boy and everybody to don't step on something you can step over. You know, stuff like that. Stuff my grandpa always told me, and it made a lot of sense as I got older.
Let's chase that rabbit for a second. Kind of, I mean, obviously you said don't step on something you can step over, but what do you kind of think are some of the other core tenets of being a good woodsman?
Well, I'm gonna go back to and y'all probably heard this so much. I'm gonna go back to like Fred Bear and them, those guys like that. That it's not so much about camouflage, because half the time I don't even wear camouflage, and it's more about getting in the woods, sitting down, being still. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just that kind of thing. There's all kinds of stuff that goes into being a good woodsman, and I think being a good woodsman is just a lot of it's too is kind of off topic, but ethical stuff. You know what I mean? That people do, and people take shots as crazy shots and stuff, and that's part of being a woodsman too, also. But I just think that I think the main thing is to get in the spot, sit down and be still and quit relying on equipment so much. And I do a lot because I don't know if I've talked to you and you kind of message back and forth, and I told you I got a few hunts down here, and that's what I always tell my guys. They'll bring the ozonics and all this stuff, and just they'll have a duffel. It'll be like a duffel bag that they're carrying to a tree stand with them. And I'm like, look, guys, I only got a 14-foot river boat. We're going to sink this thing if we keep loading equipment in here. And I'm like, all you need to do is sit down and be still and listen. You're going to kill 90% of deer, or you're going to know 90% of deer is coming your way if you're sitting. I don't know how y'all's is up there, but down here in these cottonwood bottoms, we'll have 3 inches of crunchy leaves, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's so, and it echoes down, down these river banks and stuff. You can hear something walking from a long ways away. And I'm telling them to get off the phones and just listen and pay attention to the surroundings. Because I don't know if y'all have ever listened to the birds, but a lot of times the birds will kind of telltale on stuff coming through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And then down here, we got the red squirrels. They'll sure tell on a deer when he's coming through. They'll start barking at him. You know what I mean? You'll hear them way off barking, and one will bark, and then as he's coming on down, another one will start barking. Stuff like that. You know what I mean? Little stuff like that, to me, helps a lot.
It's funny you say that about woodsmanship, because that's been on my mind this past weekend. I was on a blood trail, and we lost blood. And in doing so, they very quickly started resorting to other things. Like, for instance, we're in this muddy swamp area, and
Mm-hmm.
the blood's going on a straight line, and then you can very clearly tell he's on a trail. Even though the blood ran out, we were able to, and I watched these 2 gentlemen who hunt the swamps all the time. They were following fresh tracks in the mud.
Absolutely.
To the next pine flat, and on the next pine flat, we picked up blood again, because it was easier to see than in the mud. And I remember sitting there thinking about it, like, first off, I don't hunt in mud that often, so, it doesn't really cross my mind, but I'm sure at some point I would have done that, but it wasn't on the forefront of my mind to say, okay, well, what other sign is here besides blood?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. A lot of people don't never think about that. When a deer's hurt, he's wounded, if he's running hard, he's digging in. He's digging into the ground. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of people that they don't ever think about that. I'll find more deer than most people, just because if they don't see blood, then they're done. They're stopped. I've had people say that there's no way we can find that deer. That I've run out of blood. I've looked for blood, and there's no way. And then we go down there, and 30 minutes later, I found him laying under a cedar, like up in the mountains. And he's like, well, how did you do that? And I said, look, he's dug in the whole way up this mountain right here. I said, he's hurt. I said, you can trail a deer a lot more ways than just blood. And that's absolutely, like you were saying, that's absolutely right.
I think to a certain extent that's kind of a lost art. Like, I hate to say that and just sound like the guy that just says something cliche and easy, but it kind of feels that way somewhat. It's something that I've discussed several times with some of the friends of the podcast, that you could really, like, I think you could really use to have a series on woodsmanship. Maybe that's something we'll put together one day.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It needs to, because especially the new generation of hunters and stuff that they didn't have, grandpa's teaching them, kind of, they got into it on their own.
Right.
And I'm glad those guys are. I welcome every hunter. And like me talking about, like me talking about hunting with a trad bow, I don't care what you want to hunt with. As long as you want to get in the woods and hunt, that helps all of us out. And man, I'm inviting like everybody. And I'll even, sometimes I'll see that on Facebook or on something, on somebody will put a comment about, you should have hunted with a trad bow, or you should, acting like this. And I'm like, don't downgrade these guys. Let them get into it no matter what they want to, because every new hunter just helps us out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad to see it. But I really believe, like, the new hunters that's coming in, and even the old hunters that's kind of lost the woodsmanship. Woodsmanship's a big deal. And the more you can kind of be a better woodsman, the more it'll help you in all situations, not just hunting, just kind of anything outdoors. And yeah, I'd like to see, that'd be cool if y'all did a series on woodsmanship.
What do you think you attribute that to, the loss of woodsmanship?
I think, man, I hate to tell you, but I really think like just all the gadgets that you're relying on. You start relying on gadgets and technology and stuff, and you're relying on your natural instincts and kind of relying. You know what I mean? You're relying
Sure.
on instead of relying on yourself, you're relying on other stuff, and that's never good. There's only one thing you can rely on in this world, and that's yourself. And that's what you need to. That's what you need to pay attention to everything. That's one thing I always do. It takes me. It might take, when I'm scouting, it might take me an hour to walk 125 yards because I'm walking slow. I'm taking my time. I'm looking for but I can find 10 buck rubs that a buddy of mine might find one, in 100 yard. I can kind of, I'm looking for trails and stuff like that. And there's a lot that goes into it, but man, if everybody would slow down and just rely more on woodsmanship and gadgets and technology, I think it would sure help everybody, but that's just my opinion, man.
Well, and I also wonder, and you give me your feedback on this too, and I kind of wonder if access to information, not just the internet itself, but access to information hasn't also led to us diving into things that we previously didn't understand as well, and as a result, maybe we've forgotten some things along the way. For instance, GPS is a thing, and we can track deer movements and deer patterns and deer food sources. We understand what deer eat more now, and moon phases and all that stuff. I kind of wonder if some of this isn't, like, I definitely agree. I definitely think gadgets have a lot to play with it because, it's much easier to buy a GPS than it is to learn how to use a compass and a map, and you should have both of those skills if you're going anywhere off the road.
Absolutely.
But I kind of also wonder if, woodsmanship was long since acquired and new information that enters the scene, did that become a focal point of interest because it was new and woodsmanship has remained constant for hundreds of years?
I lost you at focal point.
Oh, I was saying
we had a cutout first one.
Yeah, that's doing pretty good. It was we're 20 minutes into this, but I just wonder if that new information, which was exciting and different, became the focal point, and the older stuff just kind of fell by the wayside because it hasn't changed in a couple hundred years.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, it's new and interesting, and the moon phases and like I say, you can get on there, and I think that catches a lot of new hunters and even some of the older hunters' eyes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've watched a lot of older hunters that I used to look up to and used to think, I want to watch these guys and tell how they do, and now they got so many gadgets and stuff that I'm like, man, that they're relying on all that. So they're relying. I think it's just kind of something that's the new, you know what I mean? And everybody's kind of, and now, but I'm telling you now, gadgets is coming to be the norm. Like
Sure.
all the hunters here lately and I hate to say this, but a bunch of my hunters that come down and hunt with me and stuff every year, they have zero woodsmanship skills. And they're like, and I tell them something, and they're like, oh, you can just look and they'll show me something on the phone. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I understand that, but I know, I mean, it's kind of each his own, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I kind of beat a dead horse on that. Everybody kind of gets tired of hearing me because I'm like, but I got a couple buddies they're really good hunters, and they're the same. They agree with me. They're like, yeah, man, because a lot of times, man, I'll go on an all day hunt, and like I say, I don't ever carry a GPS, which I probably should, and it's stupid. But now a lot of, I've walked every inch of this down here where I hunt over and over and over again. I'm a firm believer in you got to put in the effort. You might not always kill the biggest deer, and you might not always kill all your tags or whatever. But I'm a firm believer if you put in all the effort you can, walking and scouting personally and finding in the off season, and listening and looking, and I think you got tons of better chances. you just up your odds. So yeah, man, that's kind of where I stand on the woodsmanship though. But I think everybody ought to learn it, ought to at least take a class in it.
That's right.
But the deal is I don't know for y'all, but like the old timers that before anything come out, the technology or anything come out, I got a chance to hunt with all them my whole life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned so much from just watching those guys. We could go way back in the mountains coon hunting at nighttime in the thickest cedars down here you ever seen in the Arbuckle. Y'all ever been through the Arbuckle Mountains?
No, man.
Nope.
Yeah, man, the cedars are thick. They touch each other, and they're just, they're 8 foot across and 14 foot high, and they just cross each other, just touch each other. So you get up in them way back in the mountains, you can't see nothing. And I mean, I can't tell you how many nights we went way back in there, and then we just come right back out because those old timers, man, they just knew.
Mm-hmm.
They just watch and I always did that. Watch what we come by, watch what we cross. If we cross a stream down there, a creek or whatever, watched, and then we just come right back out of there. And sometimes we'd be 2 or 3 miles over in there, and that don't seem too far to, some backcountry hunters or anything, but 2 or 3 miles back in these cedars where you can't see nothing is a long ways.
Sure.
And yeah, so man, I just think that a lot of people ain't had, got to really watch or hunt with the old timers that didn't know no different, that they had to rely on woodsmanship,
Yeah.
So
that's true.
That's kind of what I kind of think, and it's a shame because these older people can tell you stuff that they've learned in a lifetime that, you know what I mean, that just will amaze you.
Oh yeah.
So
well, and what they learned in a lifetime, in addition to whatever it is someone else learned and taught them, right? The best lesson learned are the lessons learned by others. Yep. I agree with that. So I'm curious. Let's dig into these mountains because we talked earlier. I had no clue Oklahoma had mountains, and in addition to mountains, it sounds like you got some really unique mountains. Like it's not just hills and trees. These cedars that touch each other. There's a variety of species that are starting to show up. Kind of give us the lay of the land. What's where in Oklahoma are the mountains, and what are they like?
Yeah, the biggest mountains are down in eastern Oklahoma. I'm in south central Oklahoma.
Okay.
And I'm in the Arbuckle Mountains, the eastern mountains, and that kind of run over into Arkansas down there around Beavers Bend and Hugo and all them places. Those are quite a bit bigger mountains than what we have. And I live in the Arbuckle Mountain, at the foot of the Arbuckle Mountains, and that's what I hunt. And we call them mountains, but people from out in Colorado and stuff would just call them big hills.
Okay.
And, yeah, I've did that. I've talked to them guys a lot, and they would actually call us flatlanders. And I got some buddies from Colorado, and they said, "Oh, you're a flatlander. You don't live in the mountains. You live in some hills." And but they're actually one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world. The Arbuckle Mountains are.
Really?
And yeah, they're cool, man. Have you ever heard of Turner Falls? It's a 77-foot waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I live like 5 minutes from that.
Oh wow.
Right here in the mountains. So yeah, and I actually hunt about 100 yards from that, or well, probably 200, around 200 yards from that is kind of. I lease a lot of the mountains down here that I right across from there, so I hunt back in there too, and so it's cool. But man, we got so many cedars in here, and they get so thick that it's hard to see anything. But you can find open draws going down, and you can hunt those open draws, and they're awesome because those deer really get out of there and they'll walk those draws, and they're awesome to hunt when you get in there. But yeah, the bigger mountains, like I say, is over east, but and there's great hunting. It's all public down there, and so man, they kill some giants down in there down east.
No, that's okay. Down east, I got you.
Yep, that's eastern Oklahoma, kind of. Yeah, kind of. It's about an hour from me, and back to the east. But man, it's all public hunting. There's I don't know how many tracks of public hunting in those mountains, and people go down there and camp, and they kill a lot of nice deer out of those mountains.
No, are those the Ozarks?
No, no.
I'm embarrassing myself. I should hush.
Yeah, I look here. I live in Oklahoma, and I don't even know what they call them. We've always called them over east.
Over east.
Yeah. Oklahoma's funny, man, like that. We have our own slang down here, and they're like, if somebody's going to go hunt those mountains, they're like, we're going over eastern.
Yeah.
And then you just know eastern means eastern Oklahoma. They're going to go hunt the eastern Oklahoma mountains over there. Yeah. So that's kind of how we just call them eastern Oklahoma mountains. It's they do a lot of logging over there. See that it changes a lot within an hour. It's all big pines over there in those mountains.
I got you.
And they do a lot of logging over there. A lot of bear over there too. A lot of bear.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't know that, but we have and our bears kind of had one of the biggest success in repopulating bear in the United States.
Really?
Yeah, in the black bear, they repopulated them here quite a few years ago, and man, they just boomed, and they're doing awesome. We got a heck of a bear hunting season now here in Oklahoma, and they keep moving more toward our mountains, and they're having a lot of bear sightings just like 20 minutes from us. So they're expecting it won't be probably another 2 years, and they'll be in the Arbuckles where I live.
Now, is that going to be a good thing for you?
I don't know. The bears don't bother me for sure. I got some coon dogs, and as long as they don't go to treeing bears, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
I don't think I can climb a tree and kick a bear out to them, but I'll probably just have to catch them up and lead them off.
Oh,
yeah, I don't
man.
know. We've had a few pictures around here. I know some guys that's got some corn feeders up in the mountains at their houses, and they've had a few pictures of black bears already tearing their feeders up and everything. So I don't know. I bet they'll be rough on these guys that feed. They got feeders. I bet they'll be rough on their feeders. For sure.
Oh, yes, they will.
Oh yeah.
Do y'all have bears?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, and I've had some not so pleasant encounters with bears as well. So, they're
Our nuisance is hogs.
yeah, we got those too.
Yeah. We have tons of hogs. I kill hogs all the time.
Yeah, that's cool,
Yeah.
man. So,
Quite that bad.
say what's that, Chase?
I said we don't have them quite. I don't think we'd have them as quite as bad as they do.
Hogs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then I really feel sorry for you guys. That's nuts.
Yeah. The last bow hunter I had down, that's what he told me. He said during the daytime, he said I had 52 hogs from daylight till dark. He said walk down the trail.
Oh my
He
God.
said, down the deer trail. And I said, you did? And he said, yeah. He said, I've never got so tired of, he said, listening to leaves crunch and thinking, oh, here he comes. Because I always tell him, you listen for leaves. I said, you
Right.
pay attention. And I said, because as thick as the timber is down here on the river, they'll be on you before you know it, because you're not going to see 20 yards in front of you at all.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I set up and everything is all at once he's going to be on you. So you have to listen. And that's what he said. He said, man, I'd get ready. He said, and then the next thing I know, it'd be a hog. I'd get ready, and he said, it'd be 8 hogs. He said, all day long. He said, I'm so tired of seeing hogs. And he was from Minnesota, and they never see hogs. And he said, I'm so tired. He ended up shooting 2, but yeah, hogs is a major nuisance.
Yeah. So how does hunting with a recurve bow and super thick stuff like that, does that play an advantage for you, or do you feel like it's a disadvantage?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it plays advantage for me. I'm an instinctive shooter. There's a lot of different ways that a trad shoots, and I mean they do everything. They string walk, and then they got a point on, so they know where to hold their arrow at.
Mm-hmm.
And me, I just look, and I just look at what I want to aim at. What I want to hit. I focus. I don't ever look at my arrow. I don't focus on it. And you build muscle memory after so long of shooting. And so hunting the thick stuff. Usually my shots is 12 yards and in, so it works awesome for me. But I think if the guys that come down here and try to hunt with the compound, they have a lot of trouble because they're used to practicing 30, 40 yards out,
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, forget about that 30 and 40 yard pin. You better focus on that 20-yard pin and in.
Yeah.
And
Right.
yeah, they hunt and they're like, this is the thickest stuff. And it's like, we can't see nothing. And I said, and they're like, we're not seeing that many. We're not seeing even a bunch of small deer. And I tell them, and I always tell them, I say, well, are you wanting to shoot really small deer? And they say no. And I say, well, then what's it matter? I said, just wait. And they always end up usually killing a pretty good deer. So they're happy. But whenever they first get here, you can see the doubt when I pick them up in the dark out of the boat or whatever. You can see the doubt in their eyes. They're like, you realize that I can't see the length of the pickup or maybe a little bit farther in front of me. And I'm like, yeah, well, it'll work out. Just stick with it. And usually they're happy they do. So, but yeah, I think it's advantage.
Yeah,
for me.
I could totally see that. If everything has to be up close and personal, it's kind of like my uncle was telling me. I was practicing for my Colorado hunt 2 years ago, or a year ago, and he's like, just worry about 20. And I was like, well, I need to worry about 60, and I'm practicing at 60. Just worry about 20. And then I looked it up, and we was talking about the average shot in Colorado with the bow is 22 yards. I was like, oh, okay, well. Then when you get out there and those woods are so thick, when you get to the points where there aren't other hunters, the woods are thick. Like it 20. Like I couldn't envision a place where I would have had a 30-yard shot on anything. But
yeah.
So
yeah.
What's the whitetail quality like in Oklahoma? Because you shoot some really fine deer. I'm curious. Are those? Does it take 5 or 6 years for that, or does Oklahoma carry a real awesome deer herd?
Oklahoma's a sleeper state for sure.
Not anymore.
Man, Oh, yeah. I guess not. But I've been saying that for the last 10 years. Man, Oklahoma's a sleeper state because I can. But now I spend a lot of time watching for deer, glassing for deer, sitting in the off season on the river, just watching big straightaways where I know they cross, and all over. I mean, all over down in here. I'll spend a lot of time watching, and I see. I mean, we got quality deer here, super quality deer, and man, we got good herds too. I mean, good numbers of deer, and all of our deer is healthy, and I mean, Oklahoma has really got a good population of deer, and they're all good and healthy, But yeah, our deer just seems like getting bigger. It seems like everybody kind of the last few years has kind of got on to let them grow. You know what I mean? Let's give them another year or two, let them grow, and we're really seeing it, man. It's really getting the benefits of it. So I'm tickled.
What's a average buck in Oklahoma? What do you think?
Well, I can tell you that. Man, it's hard. It's kind of hard to say. And it kind of depends on where you're at.
Sure.
Because let me tell you something, Oklahoma, and don't get me wrong, I'm a hillbilly too, but Oklahoma's full of hillbillies. You got some counties that shoot everything they see, and you know what I mean. The average deer that if you're just gonna come for like a 4 or 5 day hunt, you're gonna see a lot of like 120s. You know what I mean? In some areas, and then you get into some of these areas that everybody's like, hey. For the last 3 years or 4 or 5 years, we've been letting them pass and not killing anything, letting them grow and trying to kill 4.5, 5-year-old deer. And then average, you're going to see a lot of 145, 150s. And that's, you know what I mean? That's nothing. And like this year, and me and a neighbor of mine that kind of neighbors up to where my camp is, where I'm at now, we both passed on some young deer that would go 145, 150s, and like I say, because we're looking at next year and in the year after that. But and man, I'm gonna tell you what I got. I'm the world's worst because I got some bunch of like I was telling you earlier, I'll go in and I'll put trail cam. I might have 10 11 trail cameras out along the river, up in the mountains, and starting way back in areas, just trying to see what's running in there. And I had one buck that 2 years, I watched him for 2 years on the river bottom. And whenever I found him, he was probably a 150. And I knew he was a young deer, and I rattled back in there, and I rattled him in. I rattled him in 2 times in the season. I didn't shoot him. I let him grow last year. I had a chance to shoot him with a rifle, and I didn't shoot him. And then this year, I said, I'm going to kill him this year. So he blew up. He was a 170, a little bit more than 170. And so this year he come in, and he was nocturnal. So I got deeper in there, and got one picture of him in the daylight. And he was in there about 8:30. And I said, man, I got to kill him this year. And actually, about 3 days ago, the landowner about a mile and a half from where my base camp is ended up killing him, chasing the doe, and he ended up being 172 and a quarter. So,
Ooh.
So he ended up being a really good deer. I got a bunch of pictures of him. I was sad, but at least he got big. You know what I mean? At least I passed him, and me and him was talking. I said, I passed that deer so many times. I said, and this year I was going to kill him. I said, but I was glad to see you got him. But man, he ended up just being just a monster.
You and Chase have that willpower I don't know that I'll ever have.
Man, I do. You can get on my Facebook and see where I'm videoing 135, 140-inch deer, and they're under the stands and you know, right under me, and I'm sitting there just smiling because I'm like, man, that deer's got to let him live. You know what I mean?
Right.
Man, I love it. All I think about is hunting big deer. Like right now, I'm like ready for next year. I'm already thinking about where I'm going to go into, and so I'm like, I told myself quite a few years ago, I was like, man, I'm going to get on board on this, not shooting everything I see, you know, and not shooting the first thing I see and the first decent buck I see, and I'm going to try it. And it seems like it really did pretty good. So
Yeah.
it takes a little willpower though.
Yeah, if you want to kill a big one, that's what you got to do.
especially when you get 140, 145-inch deer, and he's at 8 yards, 9 yards with a trad bow in front of you, and you're like, man, I can smoke him. It takes every bit of willpower I have to hold back, but I'm like, man, next year if he comes in here, he might put on 15, 20 inches, you know, more. I'm like, yeah, it's hard to, but it's worth it, man. It is worth it. And man, as I've got a little bit older, I've got where it's more about the adventure of a hunt, and that kind of sounds cliche, but to me, it's just awesome. All the work and the preparation and everything that goes into it. A lot of people hate that part and they gripe about that part. I love that part. Hell, that's my favorite part. Yeah, that's my favorite, turning into being my favorite part of the hunt. So
I was just wanting to know what your preparation is, maybe going into a season. I feel like a lot of people kind of don't prepare as much as they should, and it sounds like that you're hunting the way that you kind of go into it is it's almost like a 365-day thing for you. Is that right?
Oh yeah. It's absolutely, man. I'll work hard in the summertime just to be able to take off, and I'll take off in September at the 1st of September, and I won't go back to work till, you know, probably the middle of February or the end of February. And I did that ever since I can remember. And it's a joke around town because, like I say, I got a tree business now, but I used to be a welder. And everybody would tell them they better come get me to build a barn or to weld up cattle guards or whatever I was doing. They said, you better get him while it's spring. They said, because toward the end of summer, said he's going to be gone. And I used to make a guy mad every year. I would contract to him building metal buildings. And I would tell him, I said, now, the 1st of September, I won't be here no more. I won't be back till next spring. And he'd start laughing, and he'd be mad at me because the 1st of September, he'd be calling. He'd go straight to voicemail because I'd be down here on the river or up in the mountains or somewhere. And, yeah, he'd be mad. It'd take him about 3 months to talk to me again. And I told him, I said, man, that's just the way I live. And my wife, when we first got married, when we were young, she knew it, but she didn't like it. But now the last 8-9 years, it's just she don't never say a word. She just smiles. She knows she knows I'll try to put enough money up to get us through, and so and so man, that's kind of a passion. But as far as preparation, man, I'll start right now. I'll start trying to get everything in line for next season. Whenever, like, say I go in there and I find something that I know I want to hunt and I know I need to clear that tree, I want to do it now, So when I come back, I might just have to pull some vines out or just try to clear a little brush to get in there real quietly or something. I want to do that now and get it ready. I don't want to be doing that right at the 1st of October. I know a lot of people that'll wait right till the 1st. That's when our season opens up, is October 1st is when our archery season opens up. And they'll be in there on the first day, trying to cut branches and put new ratchet straps on their stands or whatever it may be. Or I want to be doing that and then already have it done, ready to go. So I know whenever I go in there, but I try to get in. I've got more into carrying a lightweight stand and lightweight stick. So I like to move around a lot, so that I'll go in there and I'll prep the tree up, and I might have 10 trees kind of prepped. So down here now, if it's public, it's a different story. I like to go over and hunt public. Actually, I killed a pretty good buck this year on public with my recurve, and you kind of can't cut nothing over there, so I can't do much preparation work over there. I can kind of drag stuff out of the way to get way back in there. If we're going to take a boat or something, we can kind of go over there and kind of prep where we're going to dock the boat up at or however. But yeah, I try to make sure everything's in line. And preparation, like bow, I try to shoot my bow from right now year round. I try to shoot my bow year round. And a lot of guys will stop shooting their bow during hunting season, and I don't. I'll shoot my bow like midday if I come into camp. I'll shoot my bow maybe 30 times, 40 times a day, try to. And so I don't ever quit. I know a lot of guys that don't pull their bow out till the night before and go out there and start shooting their bow, right at dark and shoot 3 or 4 times and be like, that's good. And then 2 days later, they've wounded a deer, shot him through the front leg or something. And I'm like, man, you got to put in that preparation and get everything ready and everything right. And so that's kind of where I'm at on preparation. I'm not just a book of knowledge to tell y'all on that. I hunt a little different than most people,
Right.
but my main preparation is getting my trees ready, that I go in there and find an area I'm like, yeah, I'm hunting this and I want that tree to be ready. I don't know on public land if y'all can cut limbs or not, but we can here on public land.
No, it's heavily frowned upon.
Yeah, it is here. We can't use screw in anything or nothing like that. So I find a good spot. In our public land, they move a lot. Our deer they get heavily pressured in areas, and they kind of just move on public. And so I have to go a little farther every year in little pockets. And I actually hunt a lot of pockets of public land right off the road, right next to the road. I'll get a map and I'll find little bitty pockets, and that's where I really did good at. And that's what I did this year. I'm giving all my secrets out.
You are, man. You are. Yeah. To all 4 of our listeners.
I'll have 50 guys right off the road hunting down here in public. But I found that I found out the last couple of years that are y'all familiar with Hunting Public?
Oh, yeah.
On YouTube? Well, I found out that a lot of people is starting to try to push farther back in, to where they used to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's good because it's showing that the people's putting forth the effort, and I'm all about that. But now it seems like they're pushing down here in my area anyway. I got to thinking, I was seeing people farther in than I normally ever seen anybody in on public. And so I was like, I'm going to do some scouting right beside the roads in certain pockets of really thick brush right beside it. I'm all about really thick brush. That's what I hunt. You have a place that you can't walk through that a rabbit couldn't go, or you got the prettiest oak bottom down through there that's open up and you can see 70, 80 yards in every direction. I'm going to go where the rabbit couldn't go. I'm going to be hung up briars around my neck, not being able to get through there cussing it, but I'm going to get in there and that's where I'm going to hunt at. That's what I've always hunted, and that's what's always worked out for me. So I'll find those pockets right beside the road, and I'll get in there, and it seems like the last couple of years that it's really been good to me. And so I know I got off topic again, man.
Yeah.
Bear
Well,
with me.
That should be the title of the podcast. It shouldn't be Chasing Tails Outdoors. It should be Off Topic with Walton Chase.
Yeah, off topic. I can't stay on topic, man. I get to thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
well, that's where we get the gems. That's
Yeah.
where we get little gems and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but man, I've got to noticing that I've been finding a lot more people is like hunting off kayaks and stuff on public now, and they're
Yep.
crossing the waterways that nobody ever crossed. Like 10 years ago, nobody ever put a kayak in and crossed the waterways or went way up like Rock Creek or somewhere down here. And now I'm finding these guys doing that. Well, it's putting more pressure back there and it's pushing the deer around. So I'm finding now that these little pockets off the road that people just drive by, just going to another, to get back in there is really good. Is really working out. So
I think maybe it's like a combination of maybe you got hunting public and YouTube showing those strategies, and then like we mentioned before, everybody's got a handheld GPS on their phone, Onyx, so they're not scared to go back in the woods anymore because they know they can get out. They can track how they went in and how they can come back out. I think that's played a lot into it, is like the cyber scouting beforehand and not really having any worries about, am I going to get lost? No, I've got my handheld GPS here. It's going to get me right back to the truck if I dive deep in. What about your trail cam strategy? You mentioned you run trail cameras. We like to run trail cameras too. What's your trail cam strategy for something where you're hunting? Sounds like you're hunting river bottom and you're hunting the mountainous terrain out there. How do you go about doing that?
okay. Well, my trail camera on the mountains is. I was talking to you earlier about the draws and how thick the cedars are and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the deer down here are going to travel because, like I say, where I hunt at, there's not a lot of pressure at all. They don't hardly ever see anybody, and so they travel kind of the draws because they're the clearest. So I'll try to get down where 2 or 3 draws will meet off the side of the mountains. I'll back up and I'll look and I'll think, okay, that's going to be the easy. If I'm going to have to walk this every day, I'm going to walk. And I kind of map out a route, and I'll put it right there, kind of at the intersection in the mountains. Is how I do, and it's always worked. And I'll back up, and I might have 4 or 5 out and different draws out there. That's kind of how I scout them. I'll put it right where they have to come by, where I think that they're going to come by for sure, and it always works good. Down here on the river section, we have what we call it's like a scrawl. It's I don't know if y'all have it there or not, but we got these green scrawls and they're about 3.5, 4 foot tall, and they're just thicker than hair on a dog's back down in here. And you can see where they're walking them, and you can see where they're beat out because once they get them laid over, they're going to stay on top of them. They're going to walk them because if they don't, they're going to have to fight it again trying to break them over. And so I'll always get on them, and they look like intersections in different spots down through here, and I'll just back up kind of those intersections in like we were talking about tracks and everything earlier in woodsmanship. I'll watch where it looks like the deeper, because it's kind of sandy, softer ground down in here, and I'll see where they're just beating it out, their feet sinking down in there, and I can almost tell you right where they're coming through and how often they are by looking at that sand, because the more they turn that sand over, the wetter it's going to be. The less that they travel, the drier it's going to be. It's going to be kind of a drier crust on the ground. And so I'll find that wetter kind of sandy sand where they've been turning it over, and I'll always stick a trail camera on that. And then buck rubs. I don't care what people say. I've had a lot of people tell me that bucks don't use the same, rubs every year, but they'll use the same area. If that buck makes it and he's rubbed a lot in there, he's going to run that same area the next year and put rubs in there. So I'll always back up in that area, and I might put 2 or 3 cameras out in one little low area, just facing around different directions and that always tends to work really good for me. on that. But now I'll run. I don't know what cameras y'all run or anything, but have y'all ever seen the Tasco, just the cheap $29 camera?
Shoot. Yeah, that's my bread
Oh,
and
yeah.
butter.
Yeah, that's what I run. I bought 10 new ones this year, and yeah, I'm like, man, you can't beat those. I mean, they're not the highest quality cameras there is, but they can tell me everything I need to know. And
Yeah.
so I'll stick those suckers out, and even if it's for 3 or 4 days, just on something I think that looks good, and I'll move them. I don't care to move them every 4 or 5 days or whatever, and till I find. So that's kind of what I do, man. I just put a lot of effort into it because I'm not no. I can't tell you everything about a deer. I can't tell you, but I can tell you one thing: if you put enough effort and put enough cameras out and get them in there, then eventually you're going to pick up a deer. And then once you pick him up, you can kind of hone in on him. I'll put maybe a camera. I'll think he's either bedding in this area or he's bedding over here. So I'll spread out, put a camera on this area, put a camera over there. Okay, now I know he's bedding over here. I'll get one picture of him going, in there early in the morning, and I know that's a bedding area. And that's kind of how I hone in on them.
Sure.
That's kind of my strategy on there. And a lot of people
Okay.
don't like running trail cameras too much. They say you're putting too much thin in there. I've never had a problem with that. I've had some big 5.5, 6-year-old deer that's as smart as they come, and I don't go in there and spit all over the ground and do all that. I just go in there, ease in there, and put one up and get out of there. And that's kind of how I do it. I don't worry about putting too much sin in there.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it, if you can find them. I mean, that's what your goal is to find them. So if you're leaving them there for forever and nothing's on those cameras, then they did nothing for you.
That's what I've never understood. These guys will take cameras and they'll put them in an area, and they won't come back and touch them for 3 or 4 months. And then they come back and touch them, and the whole time they're telling me you're running cameras too much, you're going into cameras too much. And then they pull their cameras out, and all they got's a bunch of does and a bunch of hogs and stuff on there. And then here I pull my cameras out, and I say, well, I've had this one up 3 days, and look at this deer, and look at this deer. I've got tons and tons of good bucks. Now, granted, I didn't kill them this year, but I've got them all over. I mean, I've probably got 200 pictures of different bucks in between the mountains and here. Nice bucks from 145, because I'll screenshot every one that's about 135, 145 on up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know, and I can go back and I can look at it and say, this is the end of September, this is the middle of October, and I've got this deer 5 times in a week coming by here in the middle of October. I can kind of get a pattern, get a strategy, from that way. And so I don't go into hunting season blind, not knowing what I got. I go into hunting season knowing that I got deer, because I've run my cameras every 3 to 5 days. I know where the deer are at, and so that helps me a lot too.
Yeah, I think it's all dependent on like a little bit of maybe pressure. I know some people like to let them soak for like maybe the next year type thing. Where they'll go in and they're not really necessarily using them for that season. They're like, okay, I'm not necessarily going to hunt this area this year, but I'm going to leave a camera over here and let it soak for 3 or 4 months to get some intel. But I'm on the same track as you. I like going in and getting the most recent intel I can get of, okay, that buck's been in here several times. I need to get in here and hunt now, as opposed to I let it sit for 3 weeks and he came by 5 times in a week span or something like that, and you're like, well, I should have been here then, because now he's moved on, or now he's worried about does or something like that. So I'm on that same strategy.
Absolutely. A lot of people say, "Oh, you don't worry about October." I'm not even concerned in October, because that's the null, or whatever everybody calls it. They call it the null up down here, or whatever is that how you say it? The null or the law?
The lull, yeah, the October lull.
Yeah, the October law, yeah, or whatever.
Kind of the same thing.
I'm like, that's crazy, because they just rely on the rut to bring a buck by. I don't want to rely on the rut to bring a buck by, which I know it does. I know it happens, and I know that you can kill giants that way. But I want to know where the buck's living at, what area he's bedding in, because you know what he's going to do when it comes time to start scent checking and they're getting it on their mind. they're going to run their home base first.
Right.
And they're going to check their home. They're not going to leave and go 3 miles right off the bat. They're going to run their does in their area first. And
Right.
So I want to know what's staying in that area, what's bedding in that area constantly. Because at the 1st of October, I want to know where my deer are. I don't want to be, I don't want to be behind on that. I figure if you're up a leg on that, then you're setting yourself up a little better. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't just want to rely on the rut to bring a deer by.
Yeah.
Yeah, that deer I killed in public hunting this year, I got him 2 months prior to that. I mean, on the trail, and it was like clockwork, man. I had him on the trail and kept having his pictures and on there, and I had a little mishap with him because the first time I went in there to hunt him, I know what trail he was running, and I got in there, and about 9:30 that morning he come down the trail. And this deer he's been pressured before, and I don't know if like just boats and stuff like that coming in out of our lake has got him pressured or what. But at one time or another, he had seen a hunter in a tree stand, because I go in there that morning, I set up my tree stand, never have been on that trail before or anything, and I knew he'd be coming down it sooner or later that day. And I was up there. I could hear him coming. I seen him coming through the thickest stuff that you can imagine. And he has to weave his horns to get in and out of there. And he's weaving his horns. And I'm watching him the whole time. I'm already up. I got my recurve ready. And he comes down through there. And he gets out of finally breaks a big old sapling with his horns and pulls it out. And he steps out in just a little bit of an opening right there. And he looked straight up at me like I'd not moved or anything. And he just looked straight up in the tree at me and starts backing up. And I'm like, he's good. He's not going to bust. And he's like, looks down, he looks back up, and he looks down. And I'm just being still. And he turns just a little bit, and he gets broadside. And I let the arrow fly on him. And when I do, it hits I couldn't see it from where I was sitting. It hits a sapling about the size of your thumb, and it shoots my arrow about 50 foot straight up in the air, and until I can't see it no more. It's like the arrow's going, I can see it for like 50 foot because I shoot solid white fletchings and a white wrap on, and it goes up, and I'm like, damn. And he trots off, man, and he's like, what just happened? And he trots off, and I'm like, all right. I'm like, I gotta get a different strategy on this deer because he's already coming through looking up in the trees and stuff. So I get another couple trail cameras pictures of him, and I'm like, he's using another trail consistently, but not all the time. So I go in there and I hunt the first day and never see nothing. And the second day I hunt almost till dark, and I had a decent little, probably 125, maybe 130 inch deer come under me. And I'm like, he's fixing to be dark pretty quick. I'm like, he ain't going to make it today. And about that time, I no more get that thought out, and I hear him down through there, and I look down. Here he comes down the trail. And he was doing the same thing. He'd come out, and he'd look up. When he got to the bigger timber, he'd look up. He'd look up in the trees, and he just looked right through me, man. He come out there, and he was just about to get right, and he looked straight up at me. And he just kind of turned again to do the exact same thing, and he turned. And he went broadside, and I let her fly again and just drilled him that time. But I was like, man, that deer. I was like, I've never seen a deer that just walks through the timber looking straight up in every tree.
Right.
I was like, yeah. I was like, man, maybe I should have wore camouflage this time. I had a pair of camouflage pants on, but I just had a gray hoodie on. And I was like, when he looked up at me, I was like, dang, I should have invested in some high-dollar camo like everybody else.
Oh, man. Dang.
But, yeah, ended up getting him. I was tickled, man, because I had a lot of pictures of him.
How long will you how much effort will you put into an area hunting? You know, you said you move pretty quickly with trail cameras. How much time do you put into an area hunting before you feel like it may influence that area, or do you think you can sometimes just get away with it?
What do you mean? Like, how long will I sit in there and actually hunt?
Well, I mean, like, how many? So, like, you find a great trail. Sign is there. A lot of people subscribe to the first sit, best sit mentality, but I found sometimes you can
Not
hunt
me.
an area several times and still have success, and it kind of takes that depending on the size of their range. Um, are you constantly on the move, or will you dedicate a couple sits to a hot area before you do?
Oh yeah, dude. I give myself 3. If I'm not hunting all day, I'll hunt an area, and I had to do this for discipline because I found myself getting into because I do so much scouting and I got so many different spots that I would like to hunt
Mm-hmm.
that if I don't discipline myself, that I'll catch myself jumping around. I'm my world's worst enemy. I'm like, I knew this morning I should have went deep into this spot on the river, or I should have went deep into this spot on a mountain draw or something. And so I told myself I'm going to set 3 morning sets and 3 evening sets if there's good sign, and I got trail camera pictures and I know the deer's in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna keep, because you know how deer are, man. They can come through just 20 minutes after you climbing down to the stand
Sure.
after dark, or whatever, and then you're thinking, you know what I mean? You're thinking, but every time I get a trail camera picture, and I do this as a rule, if I got him like consistently at nighttime, I try to map out where he's coming from, and I try to say, okay, 30 minutes before it would still be daylight. So give me 30 minutes of him just walking up this trail, and if I can, I'll try to go up the trail where I'm thinking I can catch him before, when it's kind of October, I'm trying to catch him before dark, so I'll move closer to where I think he's coming out of a bedding area at.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And I'll always do that. But man, I try to dedicate, like, if I know there's a nice deer there in something I really, really, really want to hunt and really want to try to get killed, I'll try to dedicate at least 3 sets in the morning, 3 sets in the evening there before I try to switch up on him.
Okay.
And I don't always do it, and then sometimes I do it a little longer, but that's kind of what I had to teach myself, because I find myself wanting to bounce around every now and then.
Sure.
And trail cameras have showed me that bouncing around sometimes is the worst thing I can do, because I'll miss that deer the hunt 2 days, and the 3rd day he come through there 2 different times, and I'm like, man. But yeah, that's kind of the rule of thumb. And if I have an encounter with a deer like that, and like he blows on me, or I seen him, and I don't never get blowed on too often, and I'll always change it up, man, on him, because I'm a firm believer is, they know their home, and they know where they got spooked at or whatever, and so I'll try to switch it up on him, man, and try to move around a little bit. I might move up the trail or move down the trail, or kind of however, but that's kind of my strategy on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do y'all try to sit longer, or how do y'all sit?
Chase, what's you start with that, and then I'll add my 2 cents.
It just depends. Like I said, if I've got the deer on camera in that area and he's not really no pattern, but I know that's kind of his core area, then I'll dedicate as many sits kind of as it takes, as long as the conditions will allow me to hunt there. Like if the wind's right, or if I'm just going, okay, I know he's bedded in here somewhere, then if the wind's good, then I'm going to sit there. If not, then I'm not. I mean, I'm not going to go blow him out of there, but it's just sometimes it takes those, just you got to keep going in there over and over and again. And somebody's like, well, you're leaving your ground scent, you're leaving that. Well, maybe, but he just may not have crossed in that hole. He may not have crossed that area at all that night, or even that next morning, and he never knew you were in there that hunt. And as long as I keep getting him on camera in that area, then I'm going to keep devoting myself to that. I may move trees or something like that here and there, but I'm still kind of sticking to that area where I think my best odds of getting the shot that I want is how I'm gonna approach it. And I'm not gonna just go, well, I sat that once, that was my best time in, it's over, because I've sat in spots and not seen anything the first time in, and then go back the next day and it's like gangbusters out there, and you're seeing 10 does and 3 or 4 bucks. I mean, so I think that there are some sound principles to the first sit in, but I also believe that that's not the necessarily end all be all. That I've killed plenty of deer. The deer I just killed, it was probably my 5th sit in there when I killed him. So and I didn't see him at all till that fifth sit, but I knew he was in that area. And I was seeing plenty of other deer, and as long as the wind was good, I wasn't really messing those other deer up. They were still hanging around, so I was like, well, I'm good. Yeah. So that's how I approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, man. I'm with you on that for sure.
I've kind of gotten to that same way, where I'll throw 2 or 3 sits at an area before I write it off, and whenever I do that, I try and make it the same time period, because what I found here is their range is monstrous. Where I am in Florida compared to Chase, I think their range here is quite disproportionately large. And so if you take what Chase says and then you factor in the fact that I think they have a bigger range, I mean, I might, everybody says find the fresh sign and then hunt it. Well, I mean, sometimes that can work really well for you. I'm not discrediting that, but it might take you a couple of morning and evening sits to verify that, because I had a buddy of mine opening day of deer season. The night before, he sent me a photo and said, here's our target deer we're going after. His buddy killed it a mile away the next morning, and he had gotten the photo the morning before. And so, put that range on a map and draw a circle. I'm sure it's not a perfect circle, but take a half mile around there and draw a circle. Those are all the potential places he might be. I'm sure we can rein it in a little bit, but I used to just sit one place and jump to the next spot because I'm leaving scent and all this stuff, and I had to just kind of come to terms with what Chase said, and that is there's a darn good chance I didn't even influence that deer. If he isn't downwind of me blowing, I'm just going to operate on the fact that I got in and out of there without him knowing any better.
Yep. I know areas are different and part of the countries are different, but down here, man, and this is going to sound crazy to y'all probably, and a lot of people's like, that's crazy, but a lot of times to get into a spot way back in there, like say I'll come off the river and I'll jump out of the boat and I'll head to a spot, I'll hit a deer trail to get to it, because I'm more about, I don't want to make noise and blow out, and I can't tell you how many times I've walked down a deer trail and 30 minutes after daylight, deer funnel right down there, never pay it no attention, come right. I mean, I can watch them coming right from where I come. They're right on the deer trail. It just seems like it don't bother them like a lot of people think.
Mm-hmm.
And down here, and I know different parts of the country is different, but to me, I don't necessarily think that you spook them as bad as you think you do.
Right.
And but there's some deer like on public, man, that them really high pressured areas that you got to be on your game, because they might be, the rifle season is the worst down here. We don't have a whole lot of archery hunters during public, but when the opening day of rifle season comes, you can sit on the road and watch those deer cross the road leaving out of there. Like they know they're getting so much pressure that they know to leave out of there, man. So
yeah, I think that's an important thing to factor in, is the amount of pressure, because I think that it probably has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I believe so too.
I think that's probably it, because I've had places. What Craig Kroom said that on one of the previous podcasts, didn't he, Chase? That the pressure that they receive on a day in, day out basis probably has a lot to do with it. If you go into an area that's never being pressured, and then there's a huge influx of hunters, their situation is going to change. Whereas it sounds like you're kind of in some more remote areas, and as a result, you can probably get in and out using the water access, and you're probably pretty stealthy about it all. So you probably can get away with, I'm not going to say murder, but you probably can get away with a little bit more as well.
Yeah. Man, and that's the deal with me. I'm not one of these great public land hunters that hunt public land all the time, man. I hunt a lot of just private, river access and stuff like that, knock on doors. I mean, I knock on a lot of doors and say, hey, can I hunt and who I am and all this. And yeah, man. And I tell them, and I'll say, look, I'm coming in off a boat, and I don't need to cross you. I don't need to drive in on you. You just got this little section between your fields and the river that's all growed out. And they're like, I don't care. We ain't been in there in 30 years and stuff like that. So that helps me a lot. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And there's just no pressure, man. There's just none. Yeah. And same way with the mountains. There's some of those on some of these ranches up here that they would have to hike in there, man. And I do a lot of hiking, and they would have to hike in there like, yeah, we don't care. I'm like, I just want to I don't want to drive across you. I just want to park on the road and just hike way back in there. And they're like, yeah, go ahead. They're like, don't get snake bit. And I said, oh yeah, I'm good. And so that helps me a lot. But yeah, man, I like to get in stuff that people ain't been in years, and because like I know, man, big bucks are smart, and they know where people's coming and when people's going, and they're going to get away from that the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what I look for. I kind of get to thinking, and the more I drive down the river, I'm like, that area right there probably ain't had nobody in it in forever. And if I don't have access to it, I'll go around and knock on. I'll go back base camp, get in my pickup, and drive wherever I have to drive to go knock on the door. And most of the time, they're like, "Yeah, you just want to hunt that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I don't want to come across you. They don't like you. You don't want to hunt the wheat field?" I said, "No, I don't want to hunt the wheat field at all." And they're like, "Yeah, we don't have no problem with it." And I'm like, stuff like that. So that's a lot of the times that's where we kill a lot of deer at.
That's awesome.
So,
it sounds like you've been resourceful to find ways to create opportunities.
Yeah, man, you have to.
Right.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer in have to. Yeah, I want to create, like you said, opportunities, man. And so, from the end of hunting season till the next hunting season, that's all I'm trying to do is find stuff and find new stuff and talk to people and say, hey, how long has it been since you've been in there? Is this windstorm very bad? Because we have a lot of windstorm stuff down here that blow the top out of these cottonwood trees. They're like, I don't know. We ain't been in there in 10 years. And then that's opens the door. Hey, would you care if I come in off the boat and hunt that? There, check it out and hunt it? We don't care, And so, yeah, I got tons of hunting land from doing that. So a lot of people, that's kind of a lost start too. A lot of people don't go knock on doors no more and ask for permission. I think they're too scared of somebody saying no. yeah. Down here anyway, they don't do it like they should.
Yeah.
And I can ask I can go and knock on a lot of people's doors, and I just come up to them and knock on the door, and people's like, "What? How do you do that?" And I'm like, "Man, I knock on the people's door like we used to. I step back away from the door 10 foot, and when they come to the screen door, I say, hello, I'm Ricky, and I was just going to ask you, but if I don't know them or anything, I said, I just talk to the people. And 99% of the time, they're hesitant at first. You talk to them for 10 minutes, and they're like, oh, still a pretty good guy. Yeah, if you don't want to drive across, you can come in,
Yeah.
From the back. So that helps me a lot, man.
It's funny. I do a lot of the landowners around here. The property isn't adjacent to where they live, so I do a lot of handwritten letters, and I'd say I get about 10% yeses to the letters that I send out. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think people are apprehensive. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't really want to hear no. It's the same reason why you don't talk to the girl at the bar.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're scared of getting shot down.
That's right. There may be no logical reason for you to fear that, but you might be the best looking dude in the bar, but a lot of times no scares people.
Yeah. Well, I'm absolutely not the best looking dude in the bar. I'm sure y'all probably seen a picture of me. I look scary. Yeah, I got one eye. I lost my eye when I was a little kid, and I got one blue eye and one green eye, and I look like a dang mountain man half the time with a big old beard and stuff. So when I walk up to somebody's door, they kind of the first look, they're like, "Who is this guy?" and then I walk around about 300 pounds. I usually slim down by hunting season because I'm hiking and stuff. So, but I usually in the off season I'm walking around about 300 pounds. So I go to somebody's door and they're pretty hesitant. but man, I just found out you just be honest with your intentions and just like I think there's some deer. I just be honest with them, and then. Down here, I mean, more than half of the time they're like, "Yeah, we don't care if that's all you want to do." But right. Yeah, that's. I think people just don't talk to people no more.
Chase, what were you gonna say? I thought I heard you say something.
I was just going to say they might be scared of saying no to you.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
It might be the opposite. Like, if I tell this guy no, what's going to happen?
Oh man, I'm dead. That is hysterical.
I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, that might be the reason.
Yeah. Good Lord, that's funny.
I don't know. I know the older people. They'd rather you get out and talk to them and shake their hand. You know what I mean? Get out and say, even if it's a no, just say, well, thank you for your time, and shake their hand and say, if you ever change your mind or something like that, or just leave it at that. Most time they don't change their mind, but you never know. Every once in a while, I had one guy that all he talked about, he's not too far from my base camp on the river, and nobody will ever hunt on me. Nobody will ever do this. Nobody will ever do that on me. And he was like, he didn't want anybody on him for no reason. And I see him in the coffee shop in the morning times, and I stop by there. I'd say, when you gonna let me hunt? And he'd start laughing. He'd say, you ain't never gonna hunt. And it was just about 5 years ago. We was talking, and he said something, and I said, you ought to at least let me come in there and shoot them pigs since they're tearing your land up so bad. I said, I'll just come right off the river. And he said, if you'll shoot them pigs, he said, I'll let you deer hunt on me. He said, that big old patch of timber down in there. And I said, well, I'll shoot all the pigs. I said, you ain't got to let me deer hunt. I said, I'll just shoot the pigs just to shoot the pigs off of you. And then after that, I can do whatever I want to. I don't have to stop, ask him, call him or nothing. He said, don't ever ask me. His wife was there one day, and I pulled in there and I knocked on the door, and her name's El Ray. And I said, El Ray, I said, I was just going to see about going down here to the river. I said, I was going to let y'all know. And she said, don't ever come back here again. She said, if you want to lose permission, she said, come back here and ask me again to go down there. And I said, well, I got it made now.
Yeah, good Lord.
Yeah. So I ended up going in there, and I took me and a buddy of mine. We went down there in the river this year, and we were rattling and ended up rattling a couple littler deer, and was about to leave, and we had a group of does run in there, and we ended up shooting 2 does in the boat and throwing them in the boat and head back to camp. But I've not killed a big deer off that place, but I know there's some in there for sure. I've got pictures of them, but
that's awesome.
But anyway,
man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. But the older people, they like for you to come talk to them. And handwritten letters, that is just a lost communication right there, man. If you're doing that, you're on it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Nobody writes a hand. My wife actually started doing hand Christmas cards this year and sending them out. She's got a big old stack at home of them, and I didn't say nothing to her, but I thought that's pretty cool. She started handwriting Christmas cards out to send them to everybody, and I thought that's pretty neat. We've got so used to sending a text message or something over Facebook, and that's it. So,
yeah. I think it's some. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not getting access to all these different parcels, but I just got a letter today. It's funny that I maybe this is why I brought it up, but I wrote this fellow a letter. He's got a couple hundred acres up in Atlanta, and this is the neatest no letter I've ever gotten in my entire life, which is the funny thing. I get responses to like almost all of my handwritten letters. I don't send a bunch of them, maybe 3, 4, 5 a year. But this joker's got his own stationery that's printed up that goes in his own little like custom little envelope, and he hand wrote in cursive to me that he appreciated me reaching out and to contact the land manager if I was still interested next year in hunting. And I got the letter, and this sounds bad, but you know how some of the scammers will send you letters that look like they're handwritten, but they're really printed out on stationery?
Mm-hmm.
I've been getting a lot of those from insurance companies, and when I looked through the envelope, I could see that. I dang near threw this thing out because I didn't recognize the name and address because I sent the letter months ago. And I was like, well, I'll open it up. You never know what it is. And here I get this old school. I mean, this guy had to be old school to be still, ordering several hundred sheets of little note paper to send letters out on, So it was just neat. It's the nicest no letter I've ever gotten.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And there's some dude in PA every year. He owns some property behind my house, about 240 acres. He does nothing with it, And every year I write him a letter and I implore with him the need for him to let me hunt behind my house. One day he's either going to get a restraining order on me or tell me no.
Hey, that's consistency. Just keep on, man. He'll break one of these days. He's just like the guy at the coffee shop.
That's right.
He'll get so tired of telling you no that he's finally just feels sorry for you.
Oh, man. Well, this is a question I ask everybody, and it's always interesting to hear what they have to say. And I have a feeling this time I actually know what you're going to say, so we're going to see. But if you could go back to your earliest deer hunting self and impart one single piece of wisdom that would have forever changed for the better the deer hunter that you are today, what would you have told your younger self?
Give me just 1 second. I got so much stuff that I could have told myself back then. I was an awful deer hunter when I first started. This is going to sound kind of corny, but I'm gonna tell you honestly.
Come on.
That quit worrying about killing stuff so much and just enjoy the time. Just the time in the woods with my grandpa and everything.
Oh,
that would have been that wasn't what you was thinking, was it?
It sure wasn't. Did you throw me that curveball on purpose?
No, but that's what I think about a lot of times. I'm like, if I could go back to when I was younger and my grandpa was still alive and hunting and everything, I would have enjoyed more the hunt and going hunting and listen to what he said than actually wanting to kill something so bad.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Absolutely.
And that's kind of one thing I'd change, the most importantly thing, because I missed out on a lot of quality time and a lot of listening to, like I say, the old timers and stuff. I just so crazy about wanting to kill a big deer to show everybody.
Right.
That I would have enjoyed it more, and I'd have probably come away with a lot more knowledge.
Yeah,
I did that.
That's some real solid advice. I thought you were going to say woodsmanship.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I started to say that, and I was like, man, I should have learned more woodsmanship, and I wish I'd have had more woodsmanship. But that's kind of goes hand in hand with listening to my grandpa, because my grandpa was crazy like that. I'd be walking behind him when I was younger, and he would say, "Hey, you didn't need to step on that stick. You could have stepped over. That's like I told you, don't step on something. You can step over that. Come from my grandpa." He would turn around like in the middle of going down a trail or something, going to try to go in to hunt, and he'd say, "Hey, watch my feet. If I step over something, you step over it." And like, I've drove my boy crazy. My boy I've literally drove, and you can do that. I have to lighten up on my boy some, because I'm like, I'm going to ruin it. It's not even going to be fun, because I'm on him all the time about set still and be patient and step over stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, woodsmanship's a big deal. But if I'd have had to do all over, I'd have just enjoyed more of the hunt with my grandpa than just trying to kill something, you know.
Sure. No, that's good, man. That's
so
good.
It was a curveball.
You got me, man. I every once in a while I feel like I really got somebody pegged, and they always send me that direction. So you cut me down to size.
Yeah, but woodsmanship's a big deal. I want everybody to learn woodsmanship.
Yeah. Oh man, well, dude, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your hunting season. I know how much you cherish it after talking to you now, and you know, I think we're gonna have to have you back on at some point in time, and maybe do a woodsmanship podcast. Maybe we can incorporate some lessons you've learned by hunting with a trad bow that could incorporate. But I'm really liking the idea of a woodsmanship series.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If y'all decide to do it, give me a little time to jog down some notes.
Yeah.
Don't catch me on I'm one of these people that's got to prepare, man. You know, I like to do my preparation, so I can jot down some keynotes, and then I can really keynote. You're going to have me thinking for the next 2 weeks what all goes into woodsmanship.
That's right.
Shoot, yeah, man. It's been fun. It's been cool talking to y'all.
Yeah, buddy. For sure. Hang on 1 second. We want to chat with you afterwards, but I'm going to wrap this up. Guys, Clay, If you're listening, dude, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. This one, I found him just for you, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think we probably could have spent another hour and a half talking. If you enjoyed this podcast, like us on Facebook, Instagram, consider joining Patreon, but most importantly, no matter what you do, get outside and enjoy the great outdoors.